welcome everybody. It's May the 20th. My name is Don Prezant and this is Badge Clinic, May the 20th, 2020. We're very pleased today to have Jeff Gran with us from the Credential engine, and they've got a number of things underway that we have a lot of people here wanting to find out more about. So I'm just going to hand it over to Jeff. We're going to talk for about 30 or 40 minutes. He's going to talk about 30 or 40 minutes, and then we'll take some questions and answers. Jeff, take it away.
Hey, thanks, Don. Much appreciated and glad to join all of you. I hadn't really been connected with this group till the last meeting, and very generous of all of you to give me some time here today. I put together, well, it's just some notes about other activity I'm involved in. So, feel free to check that out after the meeting. I'd be happy to follow up and talk with anyone that is interested in those particular things. But I think what I'll do is share my screen, and I've got a deck that will help us just kind of keep pace with the materials. Let's see.
By the way, sorry about cutting you off from your notes there.
Oh yeah, no, not at all, no troubles. Oh, there we go. Okay, and then if I click, let's see here, if I click this button, I should be, you guys can see a presentation deck, very good, thank you. Okay, sure, so as far as an agenda goes, I didn't really know to what extent anyone was familiar with Credential Engine's work, so I thought I'd just provide some very basic context in case that's helpful. And I'll just recognize in the time not try to dwell too much on that, but the main thing that'll probably interest everyone here is this idea of a badge survey. Credential Engine does research on the credentials that are being offered into the marketplace, and this year we're trying to refresh and deepen our work in regards to badges in particular. There's probably lots to talk about. I was just kind of brainstorming where the discussion might go. These were some topics that were on my mind around how you see badges being used, what kind of practices are emerging, how we'll talk more about CTDL, but how that schema might be used in concert with badges better, and just other research questions you have. But just feel free to chime in and ask questions if you have any as we go. So Credential Engine is a relatively young and small nonprofit based in DC. I happen to work in remotely from Minnesota. I've been with Credential Engine about 2 years. Like I say, we're a nonprofit focused on advancing credential transparency in the marketplace, and we do that through building communities, partnerships, and developing technologies in general. So the technology suites, there are many to talk about, but I thought we'd just get started in thinking about the market size and the scale, because we hear credentials and we might think a degree kind of based on your personal experience of having obtained credentials. But really, it's a very large market. There's at least, I think we have defined 23 different types of credentials that an individual could obtain, and counted in the US, over 730,000 credentials being offered. So that might be a bachelor's degree in business administration at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus. Okay, so that would be the granularity of the credential data that we're counting. There is a combination of the credential type, its focus, its program, and the issuer. So it's a lot of credentials, and we feel like the size of that market and the pace with which changes are occurring within it, let alone the importance of credentials to individuals' lives, that fully justifies having a new way of managing credential data for the public. And that's what our mission's about. Our approach is to use the same technology that has been successful in all kinds of other industries, the travel industry, the commerce sectors, linked open data. And that's going to resonate, I'm sure, here with this community. Linked open data, Open Badges 2.0 is a core asset of that specification. And we don't think about it, but our apps, Google Maps, the I'm not going to say the word, but the voice recognized device I have sitting next to me all depend on having good structured linked open data about key information to be helpful to people. And we just don't have that for credentials. And so that's what we're working on. We do it in a way that humans can benefit. So this is a example of a definition of a certification. So any person, any organization that is issuing a certification can decide for themselves if their certification is consistent with this definition. It has a lot of key attributes in it. It's time limited, revocable. All of those terms were roundly debated amongst our advisory groups. We have 5 different advisory groups, including one on just certification and licensing with industry experts, and they had reached consensus on this definition. So there could be lots of definitions. What we're often looking for is what is a definition that will satisfy the constituents that are most highly involved in this space. And that's what we look to our advisory groups for, but it is an open process and we'd welcome more folks to get involved. But it's not just, and so one other thing to just say real quick is that there's a lot of terms. We have over 500 terms, but it's not just a dictionary, it's a structured language and that machines can understand. And so this slide just kind of represents some of our top level classes and connections amongst these terms. And we don't have to get into all of it, but this structured machine readable nature of linked open data is key for all of the applications that we hope will be serving people better than they do today. Our technologies help people use this language by having online editors. We have bulk upload tools. We have APIs and widgets that enable people that aren't technically sophisticated to speak CTDL on the web to describe their credential offerings. And we have a registry that is the main focal point for storing CTDL encoded, or the CTDL described data serialized as JSON LD on the web. So anyway, that's what we're up to. Here's kind of a worked example to see how it works. The main thing to note is that these are, each line here is a triple. It's connecting, in this case, the university or the College of Santa Rosa Junior College is saying that their applied dental science certificate is, their dental assisting certificate is an accredited certificate from this credential assurance organization. And to get this certificate, students must demonstrate this particular competency down here below. So all of those lines are represented in JSON LD and using the CTDL schema. And it can get complicated. You can use more terms to describe more things about a certificate. And it's hard to know exactly how all this information is to be used or will be used by different people, but we think it's helpful to have this information not in PDF documents, not in web pages or books, but as linked open data on the web. So I'm going to just skip through, I think, this slide. This is from a pitch I'm prepping for this National Science Foundation grant, phase 2. But needless to say, we've been working with state agencies a lot. That's one of our primary users, is our state agency leaders who are responsible for oversight and in many cases authorizing credentials for their state. And Indiana in particular has just been a strong partner. But we do have many state partners. We have 15 states that we're working with now. They are distributed across the country of America. There's just some notes here you can check out on the different activities going on. One of the challenges, though, that we're identifying is that because of their distributed nature, it's very difficult for them to communicate and drive product changes that would be helpful for them. And so just to say, our phase 2 proposal with the NSF is to form a Midwest compact amongst 12 states to enable them to be more explicit and use their collective purchasing power to drive needed product enhancements like student information systems that can assemble credential related information and share that on the web, or competency data management tools that connect to the credential management tools, right? So these interagency, interorganizational connections are often a weak link. Just in general, data integrations continue to be a major challenge to educational technology, the entire field. So we want them to work together to negotiate master contracts for technical services. And we think the best way to do that is to just convene a community of practice. We have funds to help those state agency leaders work together more directly. And anyway, that's what we're doing. We don't think credential transparency is the end goal, though. Really, a connected ecosystem is the goal. And Lumina Foundation is one of our primary funders. They have been tracking about 38 different initiatives across this broad ecosystem that use data and technology and standards to build connections, often with employers, but other groups as well. And we have, in Indiana, we have a good example here from Google. Google Pathways is a emerging product feature that has been able to stand up new search services in the state of Indiana because of the data in the Credential Engine Registry. So this is a slide from their website. The way it works is if I'm in Indiana and I search for job training, or if I search for job training services in Indianapolis, like in this case, you'll find information about occupations here, but then you also get detailed information about credentials that support those occupational goals. And each little bit of data here come from the Credential Engine Registry, because Ivy Tech and the state of Indiana have published over 3,000 credentials and very rich information to the registry. So that's what we're hoping to do. We think there's a good chance of obtaining those goals, especially through policy partners. We just announced today a coalition of partners that are focused on making state and federal policy changes to support credential transparency. I included the link to the press release at the bottom there. And just to wrap up, I don't really know how long I've been speaking, but just to say a couple of things that are sometimes misconceptions about what we're doing. We don't actually charge any fees to publish data or use our services. We're philanthropically funded from several organizations: Lumina, Google, Microsoft, National Science Foundation, others. And the language we're creating is openly licensed explicitly. The URL that was up above, you can verify that. So if you want to use the CTDL language for your purposes, you are more than welcome to do so, and fully authorized to make use of the CTDL language. It should be a public asset for the community. Some people question if we're about defining quality. We don't think of ourselves as doing that. There's kind of some misconceptions there about our role. We want to simply describe the quality that exists in the market. We do not want to be a gatekeeper or a judge of what is a quality credential in the market. We think that there's enough there are plenty of organizations involved in that, and more coming. We just want to reveal the quality that exists. And we also just to be very explicit, we do not deal with any personally identifiable information. So this is not about the credentials that an individual has earned or obtained. It's describing the credentials that are being offered. And those rich descriptions could, though, be connected through other third-party organizations to individual, like a badge assertion. There could be, or a badge class might contain a link to rich, detailed information about the credential in the registry. So that's all I prepared on Credential Engine. The rest of my slides are sort of about the badge count, which I think was what most people here are probably interested in anyway. But let me pause before switching to that topic and see if anyone has any questions or things I could clarify.
So I was actually marking in a couple myself there in the Q&A on the Etherpad. You were mentioning, Jeff, I think 2 languages, and I picked up on the CTDL, but is there another one that I should have picked up on? Or?
Yeah, that's true. We've began actually referring to this work as a family of languages. They're all linked open data schemas. The one that we use for describing competencies is technically called a CTDL ASN. It's a profile of what was called the Achievement Standards Network that Stuart Sutton developed for many years. Through his work, he used to be affiliated with the Dublin Core work. So, but then, more and more, there are other components of the CTDL family. So we have a quantitative schema that's used to describe earnings and employment outcomes, and we're just starting work on defining some additional terms related to transfer value. Unfortunately, it is a little complicated, but we do the URL, I think, to the context file for the language contains within it the links to all the other namespaces that we're building off of, including W3C work. Open badges is linked as well. We have some equivalencies that we've articulated between CTDL and the badge specification.
Yep. Right. So that's that purl.org?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Okay, so I just added that. So I had a second question, which was, we've got people from outside the US on the call. What is happening outside the US with regard to credential transparency, Credential Engine?
Well, I'll admit I'm not as familiar with it. Much of my work, a tremendous amount of my work is focused on the state of Indiana. But I do know that Jeannie Kitchens is our Chief Technology Services Officer, and she has been involved with some international organizations. Actually, Simon, I think you probably know more about that, maybe in connections through the T3 network, about how this might connect to, other, if there are, I'll just say, if there are other international efforts to use linked open data strategies to describe credentials, we would love to work with those folks. And so that would be a helpful output for me from this call.
Great. I seem to have some Etherpad problems for typing, maybe as some others can do this, but there's a third question. Is the agent in your diagram always an institution?
Hmm. Well, no, it can be many different types of organizations. Currently, the registry itself supports just two types. It's a credential organization or a quality assurance organization. But one of the things that's complicated is we're finding there's some organizations that fulfill both of those roles. And so a more generic agent um, class might be needed to fully represent the complexity of different organizational roles. And but and then I'm not going to be able to give you a solid answer on this, but I know as part of the earnings and employment uh, outcomes work that we did last year, a topic came up related to an authorized third-party organization like a state agency itself who may calculate ROI outcomes and independently publish those data to the registry. So we would want to be able to represent them as an agent as well, but it's extendable.
Okay, so I think unless there are any other verbal questions, we could probably go on to the survey.
Okay, sure. This is a follow-up update to research we've done. This is actually will be the third release of our counting credentials report. And the badge count component of it is what I'm responsible for. I was involved in the report from the prior report that we issued, and then been working closely this year with IMS Global and the Open Badges work group to solicit these data. Just to say, it's a report that garners a lot of attention. One, I think the number is just bigger than people expect. To have 730,000 credentials being offered on the market seems overwhelming. And it's one of those things that has garnered bipartisan support for action. So we were happy that this has not become a political topic really at all. It's really more of a pragmatic, how do we make sense of all of these credentials? I pulled a key table from the report from last year that just highlights where the baseline was at from our related to digital badges. Can you all see my cursor on the screen here? I'm kind of hovering over the fourth row from the bottom that says digital badges.
Yes.
Oh, okay, thanks. What we did here was we last year we just asked major badge vendors to report to us a count of how many badge classes they have within their platform, and we didn't really we won't release the individual numbers for the individual product teams, but when you added those numbers together, we had 191,459 badge classes identified. Now, this group is going to be savvy enough to know there are lots of problems with our method and questions about the characterization of this number in regards to a count of credentials. We tried to put some caveats on that, but the main point I think for us here is to try to do better this year in our counting and begin to get a better sense of how badges are being used. Our focus has been primarily on America, but the badge community is international, as this call clearly testifies to. And so we're finding that we will be needing to take a bigger frame for this component of our report, at least. And so anyway, the link's here. If you want to check out the report, I'd encourage you to read it. This is a deck that we presented to two work groups, the Open Badge work group and then our own higher ed advisory group at Credential Engine. I thought it would just provide some general context, and then I imagine most of the valuable pieces of this will be in the discussion. Again, our goal is to just provide the public with helpful information about the size and scale of the credentialing market. And this third bullet here is kind of interesting because I do think badges have an opportunity to really illustrate the value of using an open schema to describe the details of a credential. You know, this isn't something that's possible with a paper certificate or a diploma. You can't understand what's inside it like you could with a digital credential. And so that really shaped a lot of our thinking about our approach for this year. What we've been trying to do is reassure people that one, all of the information we're gathering is definitely confidential. I know there's some market sensitivities about providing this information relative to, you know, who's the leader, who has the most badges. That is not anything that will come out of our report. And what else do I want to say here? Just that we are trying to assure people that the data we're collecting is public data. We're not asking for any kind of private information. These are badge class URLs that are publicly available. And so I know that topic has come up in a couple instances with some organizations. Not sure if they can share this information or not. This was our plan. We have extended the data collection period beyond what we had said here, May 11th. I think some organizations are needing to have some additional time to assemble their response. And just to say why that might be the case, our approach this year is more aggressive than what it was last year. We have asked for reporting of each badge class URL, and so via a spreadsheet. And so what this would enable us to do is to do a strict count of how many distinct badge classes are there across you know, the entire market, if we can get good participation from everybody. We think that's going to be super helpful in, you know, one, providing more confidence about the number that we're communicating, but two, set us up for richer research over time by tracking churn, by tracking which badges come into the market when we do this again next year, which badges are no longer being offered, or which badges are no longer having any assertions made against those badge classes. And so we'll by baselining our report this year on the badge class URLs, we think the report in 2021 is going to really provide just a lot of insights that we hope will drive more organizations to adopt the open badge specification for communicating credential achievement to individuals. I guess I just feel like in general, data standards and data interoperability is not a given. It's not obvious that that's gonna be successful. And so we wanna use our platform to help highlight the value of using open data standards. So that's been our approach. And we did ask in this context for feedback on some of the survey questions. We did refine those. It's not just the badge class URL. We're also asking about uh, well, the count of assertions, and then the count of claims that have been made against those badge class URLs. And then we have some high level questions about badge practices, like what % of these badge classes are simply participatory badges one gets for attending an event, or which of them are functioning more as a credential that denotes, your suitability for roles or future positions, that kind of thing. And then we have some open-ended questions that let product leaders speak to their needs and what observations they have about the market and its changing nature over time. So it's been good. We've gotten many strong responses already. We haven't gotten 100%, and so we're keeping our research window open and hoping to entice everyone to participate in this research. Yeah, so I think this is my last slide, just that we ended with a call to help recruit folks to respond to the survey. Oh, okay, so that is all for my prepared remarks and slides. Anything to talk about there with the badge survey?
So do we have any questions? We're picking up a question. Is CTDL used to publish transcripts? I think that's Serge's question.
Well, Serge, the closest that I would say no is the answer to that question, but we have had a recent partnership with a company called Parchment, and what they have done is embed a link to the CTDL endpoint in the registry within students' digital credentials that they issue. So I know the most about this in the context of Indiana and Ivy Tech Community College. Students there, when they get their award, when they get their associate's degree, they get, I think what Parchment calls is a digital award or something. They have some product. It's a digital visual representation of the associate's degree. It contains a link to the description of that credential in the registry. So if the student were to share it with a hiring manager, and that HR system was very savvy, it would be able to traverse that link and read all the linked open data about that certificate or about that associate's degree. But that's the most advanced, and that really only happened within the last maybe 2 months. They stood that up.
So then Serge, I think, had another question, basically talking about Google searches of badge classes, but he's suggesting Google searches of badge assertions. I guess that's what he means, is by instances. Any comments on that, or?
I think I am not too familiar with the how robust Google's search algorithms are and what they intentionally leave out of their index. I suspect the assertions are treated differently than I have heard from Nate Otto, with Badger, that this isn't something that you can just find by searching on Google in some fancy way. That there's, I don't know if it's restrictions from Google's side, or there's something about the badge class itself that prevents it from being indexed by their. So any insight others have about that, I'd like to know more.
Well, I think there was somebody was saying, too bad when they invented badges, they didn't come up with a 3-letter BDG or something on the end. And then you could just search for BDGs instead of PNGs, right? So that's part of I think that's part of the issue there. Maybe it's a bit simplistic. Um, but I think what this relates to is when people think about the badge survey, they also want to know, well, how many badges have been issued? And there was that 25 million from last year as the top figure, and I'm sure a lot of people have it in their slides. What's your take on what it's going to be this year?
To me, it just feels like the market's growing. I'm always amazed that there are so many different organizations involved in digital badges, new ones all the time, states. I learned about, I think in Idaho, they have some kind of very sophisticated skill badge program going on. So I would love to be able to answer that question as a result of the 2020 badge count.
Okay, I hear you. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
So any other questions for Jeff from the floor? I think we covered the ones on the Etherpad. Okay, well.
Maybe the question is there something that the Open Badge community should learn from the experience of with CTDL for the specification of badge classes, for example, to make them easily searchable? Is there something?
Well, one use case we've been hoping to promote has been the publishing of badges within the registry itself. And so the value there is that by having the two schema work together, you get the benefit of both. You get the standardization of the Open Badge specification and its portability and its connection with assertions to individuals. But then with CTDL, you have I would say a richer schema to describe all kinds of aspects of that badge, at least for those badges that are really fairly developed. I think it would be a valuable service to badge clients to promote and enable that kind of publishing to the registry. We'd be happy to work with anyone that wants to explore that more too.
Do you think it would be a recommendation for the next version of the badge classes standard? So we should have a number of fields in order to be able to match the fields of the CTDL one way or another?
Yeah, I don't think I know enough yet to know if that's needed. I am impressed with the Open Badge 2.0 embrace of linked open data in general, and I suspect it might just be, it very well might be satisfied with common practices or an implementation guide that could specify how, for example, the one of the things we didn't talk about is that every credential in the registry has a globally unique identifier, what we call a CTID.
Mm-hmm.
If I have that CTID, I can find the detailed CTDL information about that credential very easily. And so I don't have to carry the whole payload in the badge class. I really only need a link or a way to reference the CTID in a consistent way. And so I've just wondered if that could actually be achieved without having to version the badge class or the badge specification itself.
I'm wondering the crossover to the case framework. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I'm hearing echoes of case in what you're saying.
It makes good sense. I was the co-chair of the case specification, so
okay.
We very much need case to be successful. At this point, in my experience, very few educational institutions deal with skills or competencies in any kind of serious functional or programmatic way. It's often simply a regulatory requirement that they have or an accreditation requirement, and that's not serving students well. So we would like, so what we've done at the register, we are now CASE certified with IMS Global. So if you are managing competencies in OpenSalt or I think, is it Learning Tapestry or no, Learning Mate, I think is also compliant, then you can just use that endpoint and publish those competencies to the registry. So that the benefit of doing that is that then you can connect the competencies to the credentials in the registry as well. And we also, we hope to become, so we're CASE certified as a consumer. We're working on being CASE certified as a producer. I'm not saying that right. A publisher, I think, so that you could take any competency framework in the registry and export it in CASE format for your tool if you need to consume it and do your own management of the framework in that tool. So we want to round trip it. We actually don't have enough clients interested in competency-based education to really make this viable yet. So we'd love, if there are folks doing that, we'd like to work with you in particular.
Okay, so yeah, I was just looking at the OpenSalt server, but it looks like ACT is converting that to some kind of a paid product.
Yeah, it makes good sense, and it's hard to know what the right business models are to keep this work going long term for sustainability. Okay. So I hope they're successful. I mean, I feel like we all need better data about skills and competencies.
Okay, any other questions from the floor? Going.
Okay. Yes, well, it's a question. We're involved in a project in Lebanon where they are developing a diploma supplement, a transcript for the universities.
Yeah.
And one of the ideas we had was, why don't we use badges as a vehicle to capture the diploma supplement?
Yeah.
This way, it's very easy to endorse it, because you can endorse either a badge class or you can endorse an instance. So my question to you would be, have you considered putting the credentials within a badge?
Yeah.
In such a way, it would be easy to endorse it, so that you would provide the mechanism for endorsement by other institution, by accrediting body, and this way you would provide a very valuable service just by putting the credential within a badge.
Yeah, we'd love to do a use case like that with you directly, or anyone that's interested in, a very lightweight way of doing that might be to kind of follow Parchment is doing something kind of like that, but their product isn't an open badge. It's a proprietary award service that they contract with. But I could see an open badge, just like you described. Maybe it is a detailed transcript, but if it pertains to a credential that was awarded, then a very simple link could be embedded in the badge and then transport and fulfill all of those different functions you were describing. The closest we've come to that is in working in this. There was some discussion about the comprehensive learner record or interoperable learning records. These are each very viable ways that you could do that. And we actually submitted some guidance to IMS Global on their CLR about doing this within the CLR specification. And so there should be at the end of this month actually a worked example in their implementation guide for fulfilling that. But you could do it in an open badge too, I think. It's not anything specific to CLR per se.
Yeah, I think World Education Services has an instance where they evaluate international credentials, and they deliver a badge which links out to their online evaluation of that credential. So if it's a Bachelor of Science from Gujarati University in India, they say, A, this is real, B, here's what it's worth in this context, which could be Ontario or the US or whatever. So
that's good to know. Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, I talked with someone there maybe about 2 years ago, but I haven't followed up, but that sounds like a good use case as well with ECE.
Yeah, I think the person who set it up, he was based in New York and then he moved on. He's somewhere else right now, but I think that service is still running. He had an Italian name, I forget his name. Yeah. So, okay, well, sorry.
By putting the credential, just very shortly, to put the credential in the badge is, for example, there is a problem of recognition of diploma across countries, across states. So what you could do, you would be able to capture the endorsement of a credential by another university, and it would be there. Because it is not something that goes necessarily into the information system of the university. It could be part of a more meta system of recognition.
Yeah,
Yes.
I like that idea a lot. It happens all the time. Every time a student transfers from one place to another, it results in a new set of information, and it's siloed within that institution. It's not public data, but it could be. And it would probably benefit many people as they try to traverse complicated transfer agreements, especially now. Institutions are closing, people can't finish their program, but they want to, it's just, we need to fix it.
Okay, this has been a really good session. I'm just mindful of the time. We've come up on the hour. Jeff, thank you very much for doing this. You've added a lot of value today, and we welcome you to future calls. Any comments you might make or any contributions you might make, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you. I'll try to do that. Is it monthly?
Bi-weekly. So it's actually weekly if you can handle both English and French, but it's bi-weekly in English. So, so we have a schedule, and it's at this time, and we'll march forward through the year with some really interesting ones. We have Carrie Lemoy coming, talking about the current state with blockchain, for example, and some others, other interesting ones lined up.
Great. Yeah, I'll tune in for those. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Jeff.
Bye-bye.